Hey, greetings, new house staff. My name is Gray. I'm sorry I'm not able to be there this week, but I do want to thank everybody for taking the time out to say hi to me in the last couple of weeks. I really appreciate it. Your welcome has been so warm. So let me ask a hard question. How are you today on a scale of 1 to 10? Where 10 is the best you could be, and a 1 is you need a little more or a lot more coffee. I hope that you are well, and I hope you take time during this team meeting and all staff meeting to let your light glow a little stronger. And if you're a 3, maybe you'll be a 3.5. When staff or students or clients would share with me they were a 3, I never asked why. I would say, what would it take to be a 4? It implies through strengths perspective that you can be a 4, and that's hope. And without hope, it's really difficult to see our future. I want to share a story with you. It's about a 5-minute video. Her name is Tonir Kane. She is a domestic violence victim. She is a child abuse victim, a victim of child welfare, a victim of the system. And her story asks us to ask ourselves some challenging questions. So please enjoy.
Well, as a child, I was sexually abused. Married off to an older man at a very young age, experiencing domestic violence. I was a victim of neglect and abandonment by my mother. So I was always treated like I was worthless. And this is how things supposed to be happen in my life. And I needed to find a way to cope with my reality. I mean, at age 9, I was experiencing sexuality that you're not even supposed to. Who do that to a 9-year-old? Moving into foster care, taken from foster care by my mom just so she can marry me off to an older man who beat me constantly. I needed to find a way to cope with that, or I would have killed myself. And I used drugs and alcohol to do it. Unfortunately for me, it introduced me to different public health systems. In a mental health institution, I was always thrown into seclusion. One of the worst things you can do to somebody that's a victim of neglect and abandonment. One of the worst things, because that's how I was always treated by my mother. And now you're going to do it? So when someone come with their tray of medication or tray of food, I smacked it out of my face, because the only thing I know to do is to tap into my survival mode, because no one has taught me to do anything different. No one has identified, addressed, or treat my trauma, so I do the only thing I know to do, and that is to tap into my survival mode. And my survival mode has always told me to fight, because I didn't know there was any other way. So I did what I had to do to cope, and sometimes somebody might got hit with the tray when I smacked it. So now they're calling a code and they're throwing me down to the ground, restraining me, a rape victim, holding me down and restraining me. Somebody that has been held down and raped multiple times, doing more harm, causing more trauma, but because my chart says that I'm a crazy crackhead, the stigma, that's what they go by. That's what they go by. And unfortunately, I was re-traumatized, taking me even further away from the possibility of healing and recovery. I was a desperate child, still trying to tell somebody what happened to me. Still trying to find somebody safe enough to tell what happened to me. You know, we go to these facilities and they give us these tidbits of good information, but most of us have so much trauma packed so tightly, the bits and pieces of information can't get down there to get rooted. We got to get the stuff out of us so we can get the good stuff in us, so we can change our belief system, because once our belief system change, our thought process change, and we start to make the best decisions in our life. We can't do that if you still believe that we're a crazy crackhead. 2004, I was in prison with my daughter, and I was terrified I was about to lose another baby. I didn't know how I was going to do that. And they kept telling me about a program that addressed your trauma, help you with your addiction and your mental health. I said, well, I'm all those things and I'm pregnant. And I still, but you know what? I still didn't really have that. I didn't have high hopes. I did it because I wanted to keep my daughter. I didn't do it for anything else, because they sent me to so many different programs, one where I was court ordered and the drug counselor raped me. So how do I believe that anything would work? Really? You court ordered me to a program where I graduate and I was doing well, and then when I went back for aftercare, the counselor raped me. So I really didn't have high hopes after 19 years ago in and out of the systems that I could do better, but all I could see was me trying to keep my daughter. And when I walked through the doors of Tamar's Children, somebody said, I'm so glad you're here. After 19 years of people shaking their head in disgust at me and just saying, you're just a crazy crack kid, and hurting me over and over again, somebody told me they were glad to see me. And yes, they did. They dug deep and they worked with me one-on-one to help me to deal with what happened to me, not what was wrong with me, but what happened to me. And they did it right. And it was a one-stop shop, because understanding that I was homeless, they made sure I had a housing grant. They made sure somebody was attached to the housing grant that came out and visit me once a week to help me to create a budget and make sure that I was taking care of the property and my daughter. And I was okay with that. Some women say, oh, they all up in my business. I needed somebody to be up in my business. And they weren't judgmental. They understood and they helped me. Truly breaking the cycle, because that's what the real picture is about. Yeah, treat my trauma, or, remove the stigma to keep me out of your system. Yes, love that. But did you know that doing that was going to break the cycle for my daughter? She would be able to be given what she was given as a result. So we look at a whole different path from here on out for my daughter and her kids and their kids. I got to understand that it's a lot to do with what happened to an individual and how people were raised up or trained up. And then I could understand my job is try to educate them to remove the stigma, to understand the impact that trauma has on the individual. So instead of taking it on that, oh, you guys are awful. Well, don't get me wrong, I tell them when they're awful though. But I also know that where there's breath, there's hope. Where there's breath, there's hope. Everybody has room to get better. I'm a living proof of that.
So, very powerful message. Where there's breath, there's hope. Sorry for the audio lag. Sometimes we just can't control that, but I think most of the audio was there, and I think you can hear her story. So let's talk a little bit about trauma informed, and where is Newhouse, and where are we going to go with trauma informed? So hopefully this will be some new information for you, but maybe it won't be. Maybe it'll be information that you already know. So when you look at the history of Newhouse, 50-year, what a rich history. In 2017, Newhouse gave birth to trauma-informed care. This is right off the web page. Evidence-based therapies were offered, and trauma-informed care principles directed all of our programs. So in order to be trauma-informed, it is more than just a therapy program. Being trauma-informed is a systemic organizational change model. all the way from frontline staff, clinical staff, administrative staff, plant management, cooking, volunteers, from the top to the bottom, from the left to the right, for all sides. But before we can be trauma informed, we have to first understand that we are trauma organized. Trauma has an incredible impact on us at all levels, as an individual, as a family, as a community. We know that trauma can change our biology. It can affect our spiritual growth, our mental health, our moral health, our physical safety. And if it can do all of that to an individual, what can it do to a family, which is a collection of individuals? What can it do to an organization, which is a collection of staff members? Being trauma organized is understanding that trauma has impacted us as an agency, as a team, as a department, at all levels. 100% of the clients that come into Newhouse, not 99%, 100% have experienced trauma. It is a potent virus and a pandemic in of itself. So we know that trauma can change individuals. It also changes organizations. From that is a notion called the parallel process. It's something that I think about every day. Organizations are impacted by chronic stress, and organizational trauma can become toxic environments that add more adverse experiences to those they serve rather than healing environments. And you heard that in Tonier's words. They would restrain a rape victim. They would isolate somebody with abandonment issues for the safety of the program. Is that being trauma informed? And the answer is no, it's not. There may be some trauma informed staff within that organization, but as an organization, it has recreated the toxic environment. And clients, instead of getting better, were being exposed to more trauma. Here's the parallel process. Just scroll on down to the bottom. Sorry that my head is covering up the top. If staff are confused, an agency is struggling with its values, and clients are confused. If clients feel overwhelmed, staff will feel overwhelmed, and an agency will be overwhelmed. If clients are hopeless and staff feel hopeless, the agency is adrift without a mission. If an agency is stuck, staff will feel helpless and clients will feel helpless. This parallel process goes from left to right, right to left, and top to bottom. We have people, if we're thinking about an iceberg, we have people at the top of the iceberg, we have people at the surface, we have people below the line, below the water. The parallel process is a great way to look at what a trauma organized agency does and how it impacts everybody around them. Subsequently, all of us are vulnerable to compassion fatigue and secondary trauma. Working in an environment where everybody is exposed to trauma can have a terrible impact on our care providers, on each other, on us, leading to compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. And then, before you know it, we're acting out that trauma as an agency, as teams, as departments, through something called the collective disturbance. The collective disturbance is a situation in which strong feelings get disconnected from their source and become attached to unrelated events or interactions. For example, a man at work gets yelled at by his boss. He goes home, he yells at his wife. She then yells at the kids, and then the kids kick the dog, and then the dog bites the mailman. That is an example of a collective disturbance. The dad's emotional response of being embarrassed at work played out with his wife. And then the wife has her own experiences of being yelled at. And then she lashes out at the kids. She might not manage her own feelings or her own emotions. Every day, people come to work, come to Newhouse feeling happy, and some are feeling scared or angry. And we'll pick up each other's feelings and we'll act them out. And before you know it, we are a trauma organized agency. We're not trauma informed. We are unfortunately creating toxic environments, and we don't even usually know about it. And people can act out those feelings and be a part of the collective disturbance. And before you know it, a whole agency, a whole department can act out. People can feel disgruntled, be frustrated with each other, treat each other poorly, blame each other for stupid mistakes, forget to pass on information about meetings, miss meetings, ignore all the little rules and the little procedures. And before you know it, you don't see clients as resilient. You see clients as manipulative. You see clients as bad. So I wanted to share a collective disturbance with you from a passage. It's not very long. Bear with me here. It is from this book, Destroying Sanctuary, page 338. This book is written by Sandra Bloom. She's a psychiatrist, and at the time of this passage, she's working in a residential center for youth. Many years ago, long before Sanctuary, which is a trauma-informed model, before we knew anything about trauma, we had a young girl in our care who challenged us at every level. She was aggressive and very dysregulated. She'd run away and take rides from strangers after she left our facility. She scared us to death, the staff. She scared us to death because she was going to get herself killed. When she'd returned from an elopement, she was placed on house and room restrictions for days and watched closely by a variety of staff. Inevitably, she would run again, either when staff were not looking or once her restrictions were lifted, once her consequences were lifted. Each time she ran, the restrictions got longer and tighter and harsher. For some time, we staffed her in a room only with a small window, and it resembled a prison cell. The little girl was terribly injured, but we never took that into account. We never gave much thought to her past, a past that included physical and sexual abuse and neglect. Although we did not inflict that same kind of abuse on her, we did mistreat her. In our effort to contain her, in our effort to manage our own feelings, our feelings of fear for her, we treated her not as a little girl, but some out of control, scared, hurt, kind of a monster who needed to be contained and controlled. While this did not characterize her entire stay with us, it was certainly not our finest hour, and we ultimately failed to make substantial changes in the way this little girl's view of the world and the way she viewed us. While at Newhouse, have you been a part of a collective disturbance? Yeah, probably you have been, and possibly you didn't even know it. There are some myths about being trauma informed. It means there's no consequences. People can just do whatever they want. There's no consequences. Not true. Can you imagine a world without consequences? That's someplace I wouldn't want to live. No, we still hold people accountable, but we do it with the lens of being trauma informed. Not what's wrong with them, it's what's happened to them. Being trauma informed means lowering our expectations. No, we should have high expectations of ourselves, to always be the best and the most excellent line staff, clinical staff, advocate, at front office staff, administrative staff, plant management, kitchen staff, volunteers, board. And this is another myth. Everybody can do this. And that's not true. Everybody in social services cannot do this. It requires intentional insight. You have to intentionally understand where you're coming from. It doesn't mean that we're perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. I have plenty of errors. And please, when I make one with you, just bring it to my attention. I'll own it and we'll figure out what we can do to fix it. But not everybody can be trauma informed. It's a hard choice. Being trauma informed, again, it isn't a treatment model. It is a systems level change. It's an organizational model. It means the entire staff, including front desk staff, development staff, financial officers, must be trauma informed. So thank you for letting me join today. I want to leave you with this. Are you ready to heal as an agency? Are you ready to take your trauma informed roots of 2017 and grow them deeper like a mighty oak? They'll need to be nurtured. They'll need some sun, some rain. The goal is to build a trauma responsive organization that shares trauma, knowledge, understanding, language, practice, values, commitments, and culture. And you all are in a spot to practice. So take a moment and practice. And I look forward to hearing how it went when I get back from my journey to Arkansas to see my mentor. And when you all get back from your all staff meeting and team building, let's shine the light of Newhouse bright. Thank you so much for including me and being so kind to me. And I look forward to seeing you. And oh, by the way, I'm an 8.5.